106.1 FM. You're here on this not so sunny Saturday with Eddie, Liya, Nani, and we've got Byron back in again. Welcome back, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we just, the combo was so good we had to we can't just let this be one episode.
I'm not gonna lie, I watched that video on YouTube and I was like, no, I want in, bring him back.
Just kicking off, how's everyone been today? What's everyone been up to?
Start with yourself, Eddie.
No, I've been good. I'm just working full time. Working from home this week, working from the office next week. It's just kind of back and forth until I eventually get COVID or we all kind of come out of this thing. So just been chilling out, watching TV, trying to do some reading.
Well, that's really good. I mean, re-getting COVID, my household, we got a flatmate who got it. And so I'm literally elbow to elbow with somebody with COVID. And I've got my rat test and I'm texting negative the whole time being like, all right, y'all.
When's it coming?
Any minute now. And I'm going to get it. And it just never happened. So we came out of lockdown as of today.
Yeah.
So
oh, nice.
Testing negative. Y'all can be safe. I know I am the most up to date.
Yeah.
And
Byron.
I did some work this morning, personal training work this morning,
nice.
And then did some housework and took some notes. Now I'm here.
Yeah.
Pretty cruisy day as far as things go, to be honest.
Me. Just did some reps.
Yeah.
The petrol prices have gone up.
Yeah.
I've got enough gas to get to Kmart, but not get home. And we are still going to Kmart. I don't need to go home. My kids are grown.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting watching that, and it's again just globally. It feels like I don't know if this is something we remember during the Cold War sort of thing when obviously the Arabs shut off the oil.
Yeah, 70s.
And it's not quite to that level yet, but it's feels like the kind of first time in my lifetime I've had that kind of sort of thing where you can see global event direct correlation into stuff like oil prices.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of funny timing too. I just started getting my learner's license, and it's a bit like putting your laundry out and it starts to rain, and I'm like, okay, cool, let's get my driver. Oh, look at those oil prices now.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. Right. So what we were thinking this week is we want to kind of our conversation last week about identity and the differences, but I guess these various topics around Black identity. And I thought we could kind of continue kind of on that kind of same thread, and I guess Liya and I'm wondering if some of the discussions we've been having in the background about these kind of topics around identity, and one of the things that has come up, Liya and I were talking about was, and in this case it was about mixed race kids, but it was the idea of black folk having to exist in kind of multiple spaces, and I think that comes back to some of what you were saying kind of last week about obviously, being black here, but being I'm South African coloured, that, and I guess that idea of how we exist in multiple spaces, and I guess Byron, just kick us off. Do you have any thoughts around any additional thoughts?
I mean, I always have thoughts. I don't know if they're any good or not.
We'll give it a rating. Run them off. Be
Have a rating system going.
Oh, we can do this snaps, poetry snaps.
I mean, I had two main, obviously there's this the macro idea of it all, right? What it relates to, and then the personal kind of what happens to you as an individual when that happens. Or that might just be the fact and then the consequences. But I was thinking hit me around the idea of meaning, skin color tends to have meaning behind it, and that's not an accident. That's not by accident, because I find it difficult to talk about what we're going through now and not talk about the colonial history that established a lot of it. So when it comes to South Africa, for example, the idea of a coloured is a very specific thing because they wanted to differentiate between whites, coloureds in the middle, and then various other ones, but also then the black South Africans at the bottom. That was very much a very important thing to do. And there's speculation on, people have many ideas of why that was done. Some say, it's divide and conquer. Others say it has a lot more to do with the idea of not wanting to associate whiteness at all with blackness.
Yeah.
So, people go, oh well, this isn't an issue of because the story behind colours is very complex. There's a huge history behind it, but there's also the part of the history that is white men were having sex with Khoi women and black women.
I read a statistic about men versus racial sifting versus women versus racial sifting, and historically speaking, men don't. Like men will just like be like, nah, I like her.
Yeah.
Like whereas women will be like, exactly what is black? No, I want to know down to whom.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of relating back to that conversation about identity then perhaps is that in the South African context, I fit very specifically into that. And it's not just, I didn't decide this for myself, there's a history behind it.
Yeah.
There's also a very racial and racist history behind it too. But when I traveled to New Zealand, there was never a point that I was a coloured here.
Yeah.
There was never a point, I was black. Like that was it. You are African, you are black. But then also there's the context of when I go to the States, I'm also black there.
Yeah.
I've been to the States a few times. But that blackness means something completely different to being an immigrant in New Zealand as black. You know, there's a relationship between Africans and being black and being African here.
Yes.
You know, there's people talk about, what does it mean to be African? But again, those meanings aren't determined or made by us.
No.
They're determined by the powers that be. And in the States, being black means something completely different.
Yes.
And also being African in the States means something completely different.
Like being black African or being African black.
Yeah.
Those are two different things. Like meaningfully.
Yeah, and I guess really the point that I'm trying to make with all this is that the meaning behind identities are rooted heavily in colonial histories and are related to power. They're related to people who have the power to determine that,
100%.
but also have the power to do something with that.
Yes.
You know, like me saying to someone, hey, I'm not actually that, I'm something else. What does that mean to them? It means nothing because they still have the power and resources to determine to you how your life's going to function.
You might as well have just said a different word from a different language.
Yeah, exactly. So, in South Africa, being coloured meant that my family lived a different life from being black.
Yes.
That's what that meant.
Yeah.
So nowadays, we don't have that same strict kind of adherence to those laws, but there's still meaning behind, if you're black, that means there's implications for your life.
Yes.
And I think that's what's really interesting, and how we then choose to adopt different forms. Kind of, we spoke about the Americanization of blackness, by choosing to identify perhaps with, we spoke about it being safe. It might have been safer to identify as an American black than it was to be an African black here, because that means something different.
Yeah.
But again, who does that mean something to?
Well, I mean, so one of the things I've come back to again and again is its branding. Like, as much as it's classism, it's like literally, it's marketing and branding. Like, Black America went well out of its way to be like, black people's puppies, Fresh Prince puppies, associate us with happiness and bright colors. And we did it on purpose, whether we meant to or not. And it was actually like, it's like, internationally, people with dark skin benefited, but like the American black media machine, even without the context of like Eurocentrism, went out of its way to be like, you need to see us this way for us to operate in this society and reap as many benefits as we possibly can. And I think that to underestimate like how much that narrative was self-driven within the States, but then it got co-opted and then driven by somebody else. Like, we were like, no, we want you not to see us as like slaves. We want you to see us as Erykah Badu and Will Smith and Malcolm X. That's how we want you to see us. And I think my at least on my take on it, I don't know if you feel this way too, is like, I just want to hijack that car back because I like it. like I just want to add some more people onto the list, some more international faces, be let's take this train that was hijacked, which we built, and hijack it back off of them, and then be like, all right, okay, who's modern? Okay, the real Tarzan, get on this train. Like, who's the South African hero we need to put on this train? Like, and we just need to get that media machine rolling again with all of our, like, best faces. In fact, that's almost like my entire thesis in terms of rolling forward into the future. I think image has such an intense impact, and only more so as we move forward. So if we as a people can be like, here are our star players, you need to know about like, X, Y, and Z, here is the best musicians, here are our best, and we are dictating that to you based on our tastes.
I think because I was looking at, because, and again, bring up the Cold War again, like you said, like how much of the African American media train was self-driven versus just by virtue of how America was at the end of during the Cold War in terms of pushing its image as a global and its positioning. And I almost find, while there are still like contingencies within the global Black Diaspora in terms of like the continental Africa throughout the African diaspora, I've also seen much more recently there's a lot more collaboration like within. And obviously there's still stereotypes, there's still discussions, there's still things that need to be broken down, there's still but a lot of it seems to be a lot more positive. So I think,
Yeah.
when I was in the States, the amount of people who knew who Burna Boy was, or
Yeah.
knew who Stormzy was,
Yeah.
like, was definitely on the rise. So I think it almost feels like from within black peoples, there's a lot more collaboration, but it's when you take that and put that outside of that kind of context, when you put it outside of a Pan-African context, it feels a lot more kind of like, that's where the kind of boxes kind of really start.
They
coming
do,
in.
they degrade. I think that there's this thing where this is happening whether we like it or not. Black people are on the internet, we are literate, we do talk to one another. We are actually starting to navigate our own narrative. That was actually hard to say. We are starting to self-navigate our own narrative and like push forward as a single cohesive unit, whether we like it or not. And I think that the thing is just becoming conscious about putting power into that. Like I will promote. I'll be like, the real Sam Ryder, I just want you to know I'm your biggest fan. You know, and like just to constantly reaffirm like people in the Black diaspora who are like inspiring me, and then to say, if you're in the Black diaspora and you don't know about these people, please know about these people. They're great. They're so great. You know, and like that. Like, I'm gonna call it like almost like the Good Times Fresh Prince theory of like, black representation. And it did a lot of good. Like, it's like, regardless of Obama's politics, what he did for the black community simply by existing was huge. And I had a lot of critique that I couldn't even lodge at him because I kind of shouldn't have, because
then,
like it just did so much good.
But then do you think that is a kind of failing of that kind of politics?
Yes.
In the fact that there isn't the ability to make those valid criticisms.
Yes.
Because I know there were definitely a lot of, leading into the Obama election, there were a lot of African American scholars sitting here and like, really, like it's admirable, but like look at his policies. Like, what is this actually going to do for black folk? And again, like you sit there and go like, as an American president, what does that, as an American, as an imperialist power, what does that mean for all these other countries that are impacted by? And again, it becomes that point of like, does a blackface at the top there actually have any impact when you go around?
But I love that you called it blackface, because that's actually how I was feeling about it at the time. I'm like, this is a person with European political goals who happens to have dark skin. And I think that like my take on that so far has been, there are people who disagree, who band together, work together, even though they disagree, and they go further than people who are politically correct, but that makes them all like kind of pull apart. And I want to find the middle ground as like as a unit of people, like the ability to work with difficult people and people with contrasting opinions when our goals are shared and when going in that direction will help us.
I was just thinking on that Obama thing when you're talking about it. I was actually wearing an Obama t-shirt when I was working in the Western Australian mines. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That'll make you a hot topic.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is redneck central, and basically I'm walking around with an Obama t-shirt going, what? Whatever's.
The funny thing for me is I had so many things I wanted to say against Obama's policies that and it was really funny because I found exactly that. I was like, actually, I think Obama, and then a whole bunch of rednecks would be like, yeah, and I'm like, wait, okay.
You don't want to find those alliances.
Like, I have a lot of things to say against Obama, but then this chorus of, dancing girls behind me were not the ones I wanted.
I think it's hard because you kind of border into the conversation around symbols, right? Because you've got like the actual politics and you've got the symbolism behind that. So the symbol of what Obama is as the first black president is a really big deal. But his neoliberal politics that come out of the Democratic Party that has been there for generations is very toxic. So you've got, and I think that's kind of a thing that a lot of black folk around the world, like they straddle that line between like, okay, if that's all we have, I'll take it. However, there's this, and it's finding that battle between appreciating what the symbol is, but then also being critical enough to take a step back and go, look, this is really cool, but this is step one, man. This is, and even Obama was kind of like he's a weird step one, right? Like, it's kind of, I had this conversation about someone with the Black Panther movie, where I was like, this is really cool. Like, I loved seeing Chadwick Boseman on TV. I love seeing my skin. Like, it was just amazing. But then I had a deeper conversation with a Maori person about, you know, he spoke about Moana in a similar way. That's what that way. It's like, yeah, this is cool, man, but like
it's reductive.
And also like, where's the control? Where's our narratives within this? You know, this feels like a conversation made by someone else on our behalf, and it's like. Like I said, like it's that same straddling between the symbol is great. This is really, really cool. Like, look, I've got a guy that has similar hair color, like hair to me. Yeah. That was amazing for me. That was huge. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, that was huge. And my niece, who's you know, my sister's South African, but her husband is Pākehā Māori. Yeah. And she said to me, "Oh, you look like Black Panther." And I was like, "Hell yeah!"
That's right.
I look just like him.
Right, exactly. You know, identical with twins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you know, so
you don't know I'm not him.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know? You know? So we've got this symbol, like this battle of symbols, and the battle of you know, the actual politics behind it. I think that's a really difficult thing that we always have to have a conversation about, straddle across.
Like I did find with Black Panther, like, and it was it's interesting, like. On a first watch, I think I've only ever seen Black Panther once. I mean, I saw it in the movies like the day it came out, and that was fantastic. That was phenomenal. It was like I was cool, but then everything subsequently, I've just sat there and go like, and like I said, it is that kind of summation of like, where's this narrative kind of coming from, and where the falling down points in the art. Because from my side of things, it was like. I looked at the Hawaii of Wakanda and like they have the Panther tribe, but all the other tribes don't really get names. Yeah. Like don't.
I mean they do, but not within.
Well, it's like border tribe. Yeah. River tribe, and it's just like, well, hang on, like how is this?
You got to mention the history behind it. Right?
Yeah. How does this world building actually work? And again, it comes to the point of like, it's why like when people talk about Marvel movies, it like I said, I think like again like it's probably that kind of narrative. It's very good on the surface level, but when you actually dive into it more, yes, and from an impact level, from a symbolic level, kind of has represented this kind of new wave of Pan-Africanism.
Sort of
But then what's happened is, when you actually dig into that movie, it's not actually all that deep. No. Like, it's like, a lot of the themes behind it, you could have been expanded on in a much
they almost reinforced something.
Yeah, like the thing I was going to say is, like, the way that you're describing it, it's almost like the feeling of seeing... Like being kind of happy to see yourself represented in the Small World Disneyland ride, but then like driving past and being like, wait, like, am I really scraping the bottom of the barrel? So am I really licking the crumbs off the plate so much that this like Small World doll is a monumental step forward?
Which is kind of like an indication of like where we feel things are, right? Like,
yes, exactly.
Like you said, the fact that I'm scraping the barrel, and, wow, that's a really big step, and it's like, wow, like that's
a big step.
Yeah, you know,
that was a big step.
Yeah, and I mean, like it comes back to the idea, like people are always like, oh, in 2022 this is happening, and I'm like, why are people surprised by this? Yeah, like in terms of like white dominance or Eurocentrism, that hasn't changed a heck of a lot since the 1500s.
One could go so far as to say that, like, back in the Coccyx Mountains, like, you know, however many, you know, hundreds, thousands of years ago, there were dark-skinned people there too. Like, you know, that was a rainbow ethnicity state, and somebody whitewashed for that as well. So here we are, several thousand years later, still being like, you know,
and on the last part of the planet to be colonized. So how does that all sort of come back to? How do we fit that into a New Zealand perspective? Yeah. Like it's really different, right?
Should we come back? Come back to
that's
that?
A really
Do a bit of have a bit of a breathing room to have some musings. So yeah, speaking of blackness in New Zealand, we've got first song up for today is Computer Boy from Wagwan and Icy Ghosts. Yes. Yeah, so Wagwan, this is this album.
We still love you.
This album dropped. This album dropped last night. Like this is fresh off the press, and then I think we'll follow it up with what's going on from Wagwan to what's going on. We have what's going on from Teramoana Rapley. She's got
nice.
She's got this is from like 2 years ago.
Yep.
But she's got either a single coming out this month and an album on the way. Yeah. And then I'm feeling Still Care for Moroki. I think that's a pretty good way. We'll top it off with some Kiwis.
Some Afro Kiwis.
Alright, let's get into it. This is Computer Boy from Wagwan and Blackhouse 106.1 FM with Eddie, Nani, Liya and Byron. How was that break? That was, what do we think of the music, gang?
Oh my god, it was so chill.
From some of New Zealand's finest.
Can you feel your cortisol levels going down? That was chill AF.
I disappeared to a different world.
I know.
I was just sitting there like, that was good.
Yeah, so no, I'm really hyped. That was the one try I kind of had to like go through Wagwan's. album, just be like, shit, what track? One track. Just, and be like, okay, so I'm gonna go through. Do you know if you're listening? I'm gonna go through the whole album tonight.
Yeah, so give us some props, Wagwan.
Yeah.
Stop sitting out there in the silence.
No, he's good. He's good. Take care of yourself. We love you. You're black. It's already hard enough as it is.
But yeah, so I guess like to kind of go back into I guess kind of grounding conversation in New Zealand. I find it interesting just as a kind of kickstart, like the transition from I guess from a governmental standpoint to using Mila, so Middle Eastern, Latin American, and African as a catch-all for I guess when it comes down to the brown people.
Yeah.
It feels like that broad category of other.
Yeah.
How that feels.
Yeah.
And obviously, like Leah, we've talked before about like obviously you've mentioned like the fact that growing up you were classified as a Negro.
Yeah, and then it got changed to other. Wowee, thanks guys, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Then I had to explain that to everybody for the rest of my life. Yeah, so no, I feel it's problematic.
Well, what would you want to be classified as? Like, I mean, like, I almost want to ask
For me,
everybody.
yeah.
Like round robin. Like, what do you want? Which is always my central. Like, what do we want?
Well, I've had I would like a box on a census that says African New Zealander.
Yeah, there we go.
Broadly enough, and then underneath that we can have all the different ethnic groups. I mean, we can exist in multiple spaces at the same time. I just think that, I think we have more power the broader we go.
Yeah.
It almost feels like at two levels. So almost like there's a very high. So let's say the census is very high level. So what we would like to see in terms of census data. Because obviously, so my general feeling for a lot of things is for anything below census data, it should be a box that you just type how you self-identify. Because I think that's important in itself. I think
I've been typing how I self-identify for 55 years, man.
But it's odd because then at the same level you also need that's the problem I guess of trying to boil things down from a census data standpoint is you need that focus kind of very like you are this particular thing or you fit into that category. And like that's why like for me like the Mila category really annoys me because so from my standpoint I'm an Afro-Caribbean.
Yeah.
But then for me like where do I identify because obviously Mila tries to do these kind of geographical catch-alls but it's like okay well what's Africa like as an Afro-Caribbean like yes like I think my family's originates or the bulk of my family originated some like probably in what's modern day Nigeria. But I'm Afro-Caribbean. What's Latin America? Latin America and the Caribbean are a chain of islands that essentially are divided along who got colonized by the French, Dutch and English and who got colonized by the Spanish. And from my side of thing where I'm like, there's no distinction for me. So it's that point of being like, well, when I've been asked things like I remember being asked like, oh, do you identify this way as African or Latin American or one of these kind of 5 groups? I just said, well, take it either way. I'm of African descent or I'm Latin American because the Caribbean is in that geographic range.
Maybe I should modify, or maybe we should have something like African Diaspora of New Zealand. Boom. Everybody jump in that box and take over.
Not everyone likes the term African diaspora, but I love it.
I
personally, it warms me cockles, like, I don't know, like, I'm curious as to what you would want, like, though, like, cause, like, what you feel.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I almost feel like either you just have to do quite an extensive list and it's very regional. So again, that point at that point you would say North American Indigenous, Central America, Central American Indigenous, like Caribbean. Like, I don't know. And again, these are questions that I guess from a lawmaking standpoint you do have to grapple with. You know what I mean? But it feels interesting the way in which trying to create these kind of catch-all kind of terms. Because I know in the UK a really big one is BAME, like Black, Asian, Middle Eastern. But then it's obviously, that's even an odd one because like we have Black people as so that's let's say Africa and the Caribbean. Or like across the African diaspora, but then obviously then 2 geographic regions.
Yeah. Well, something I found interesting looking at that the ethnic status thingy that they have at Stats, the categorization, and when they were doing that sort of relook at Mila. No ethnic groups have an automatic assigned box that says Pacific New Zealander or Tongan New Zealander or that option isn't there. It's there for Europeans. has got European New Zealander. I think it also had Pākehā New Zealander or something like that. But and Māori, Indigenous, of course, and everybody else is almost like foreignized. And I'm thinking, where are we having our babies? We're not flying off. We're not flying to Australia to have our kids, you know. We're having our kids right here. And
my
if
daughter
they're
was
here,
born in Melrose.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like when you always, you know, like I think it contributes to the constant foreignization that you feel like.
Yeah.
Like TJ's sort of been, you know, my son TJ, he presents very African, and basically he's been told in shops, he's been racially profiled in shops, and they say, you know, your people, and he's like, what people? What people are you talking about? I was born in Wellington Hospital. You know, like, what the hell are you on? So I think that over time, I think when you've been here over time, that gets tiring to have to constantly explain that, Africans are born in this country too. Deal with it.
I wonder how much of it, again, always comes down to how comparatively young New Zealand is as a country. Like even we're saying, like, let's say within 200 years, you sit there and go, and obviously looking at where the migration points are. So even saying, like, so 150 years after that first colonization, whatever, or 150 years, not the first, but like that kind of European colonization, you sit there, like that, you wonder what. How do I phrase it? It's like, I guess that idea of like, it's just something that is going to develop with time, where we suddenly start to deal
I see what you're saying.
we start so suddenly there are more Africans here who were born here than have immigrated.
I like to believe that, like, sometime, like, you know, even like 10, 15 years down the line, like, this conversation we're having literally right now will have impacted, like, the direction of, like, kids so much that they'll be like, because you said that, I started questioning and identifying as, and because I did that, enough of us did, that we had a station. Before we move on too much, I'm curious as to what you would want.
Oh, well, I would want. I mean, I'm gonna answer that question. Then I want to come back to a point that you made, Eddie. So I would identify as a coloured South African. But there's a very specific reason behind that. Kind of twofold. Firstly, because there is a very specific history and culture there that I identify heavily with. So when I go to South Africa or I hear coloured people, it feels like home to me. I identify as being African and black too, because that's, again, a diaspora conversation. But part of the conversation behind identifying as a coloured South African heavily is that a lot of it was taken away from me. But in two ways, because obviously we migrated here. But secondly, when I moved here, that was never up to me anymore. I mean, the colour designation in the first place was never up to me to begin with. But it's the culture I grew up in. And suddenly, when at the age of 10, I was no longer a coloured, I became a black person. And not that I had an issue with being black, it was just like, what does that mean? Like, it was a question around the power people had to take that identity away from me and give me a new one. And that's kind of leading into my second point, coming back to the point that you made, Eddie, was the idea about, you know, you had to interrogate heavily just now about what you would like. And you were like, oh gosh, I've never really had that else. But that's the point, right? That we've never had to grapple with these conversations because the identities were already pre-made and given to us already. So when it comes, I mean, and European white populations have had the luxury to some extent for a long time, and I guess it's the ones that have power. In South Africa, for example, the designation between being, you know, East Asian, Indian, coloured, black, was of their making. Like, officially in the, I think it's the 1940s, 1950s Registration Act or whatever, they have a designation for what a colour is, and the description is someone who is not white but also not native.
Oh, right.
Wow. You know what I mean? So, like, that categorization was made by someone else. So I think what's really intriguing is now having this conversation around, but what do you identify as? And it's like, oh, wow, I'm having to piece it apart in the same way that the apartheid government did, you know, like they had the time to go, what's this and who's that and where do they belong? So what I really enjoy is having that freedom now to have that conversation, in this conversation right now, being like, what do you identify as? Oh my gosh, I never had to thought about that. And that's what's beautiful. The fact that we now get to decide for ourselves. And like you said, hopefully this conversation pushes forward another narrative to go, actually, I don't really think I fit into that mealy category. I want to make my own category.
I try to...
Which is also like it's pushing back against power.
Right?
Well.
I do actually try to presume that an amazing amount of European power is completely unconscious. That thing has been on rails for so long that I think less people are driving it, like, consciously than it seems. like
It's
even
institutionalism,
right.
because
It's like
you don't need
so,
people to be
so
racist, just-
institutional, right? Like it's just like you could remove every single white person, every single black person, this train would still keep rolling. And like I really think that meaningfully to my soul, to the point where I'm like, I honestly think that this train wants a driver so badly it accepts literally anyone. Like literally anyone who was just like, okay, so I have some ideas. They'd be like, cool, you're leader then. And so that's like why I'm always like, what do you want? What do you want? I have to say, when I started, I didn't know, and it's so nice to hear you reflect. Wait, I don't know, like, because I'm like, yeah, I remember being there, and I'd like want to put that out to like other kids. Where I'm like, do you know? Have you ever asked yourself this question? You ever sat with yourself and been like, what am I?
And just to be able to philosophize about them,
Yeah,
which I think is amazing. Like having that luxury to go, oh my gosh, what do I see myself as?
Exactly.
Which I think is very like, it's heavily anti-establishment, because a lot of the power is that no, we're telling you what you are. Hold on.
Yeah.
Me just defying that is like, it's an act of like pure just like, how dare he decide for himself what he is, you know?
Yeah.
And like that in itself is power, like an attempt at taking power back.
I actually, my son, when I gave birth to my son Solo, I coined this term Afronesian.
Yeah.
And it was so funny to me hearing on a forum that we did, young Sahara using the term Afronesian, because I don't think there was any around at that time.
I feel like I've seen it around a little bit more,
Yeah, because I've been using that term for a long time, because I sort of figured out, I thought it sounded really cool, and then I thought, well, you know, New Zealand really is in the Pacific.
Yeah.
So we're actually Polynesian, so maybe we're, you know, Afronesians, because I'm, you know, my background is also from New Zealand, as well as Africa, as well as Tanzanian.
Yeah.
So, and it was so like it really sort of shocked me when I heard Sahara going, oh, and you know, I'm Afronesian and blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh my god,
it is insane the amount of impact you can have, and you specifically are out there having impact. You have no idea. You are causing so many waves, and I'm so proud of you for that.
I think
that's amazing.
I think I've preferred to push back against what people have told me for a very long time, and it probably explains the way I've lived my life a little bit. I don't really take kindly to authority.
No.
And I think that young people should start thinking about these things a lot more seriously, because down the line, some of you may go back to Africa, some of you may go back to the Caribbean, some of you may go wherever else in the world, but some of you may still be here, like me, and be going, you know, I'm really sick of this.
Yeah.
I want to determine who I am for myself, and I want that to be recognized.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, I think that's really beautiful. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about you is like, I don't know, I just see another anarchist fire spirit, and I'm like, yeah, fight the system.
Yeah.
Burn it all
It's
down.
got me in trouble, but
Yeah, I know, right? Like, so, like, it's about like trying to fight the system, but like, no, not the whole system, just this. Like, can we get like a. Like, we don't want to burn it all down. Can we just, like, a nice smolder, make some s'mores?
I think when I was Eddie's age, I was more about burning it all down.
Yeah, right? I'm like, no, I don't want to burn it all down. I just want to get a nice fire going, and we get some sausages, get sausage season going, and I'm just like...
Now that's all I can manage with these knees. You know? I'll just sit in the corner. You guys go and burn it down.
I'm thinking we've got 14 minutes left, so I'm thinking another song or two, and then some closing remarks. Closing remarks, that's real official, like a debate.
Closing remarks from Edward.
So, one of the tracks I have coming up is called Eurovision. It's from Central C, and it's great because it's a drill track, but it's obviously, like, it's a whole bunch of European drill artists. So Central C, it's like two crews from the UK, 2 from France, 2 from Italy, and 2 from Spain.
Right.
And it's like it's a cool track. It's one of my favorite tunes at the moment. And then I'm feeling because I want it to be sunny, and so I've got Pool Party from Popcorn, which is my favorite song at the moment.
And you've got the perfect pool party outfit on.
I have to give a shout out to like all of this color matching. I love that you've got the green, I've got the orange, you've got the orange, and we're all rocking black, and it's perfect.
Gotta make it work.
Gotta make it work.
Yeah.
Alright, so this is Eurovision from Central C, and we'll see you guys in a couple minutes. And we are back on the Blackhouse 106.1 FM. Sorry, we've got a couple of things we want to go over. So I'm just sitting there, just like how I want to close out the show this week is just some cool stuff to watch, also interesting stuff to watch.
Oh, very good.
So first up is Bel-Air, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air remake. It's really good. Like,
on
I
TV
think
with on demand. Right?
they update it really well. Like I went into this series thinking it was going to be rubbish.
Yeah.
They update it really well in a way that kind of essentially it takes all the kind of key elements of the original and just places them in a modern context.
Right.
And deals with a lot of those things really well. And I think deals with blackness in that kind of space. So like, not like a huge spoiler, but like Carlton is like one of the main villains.
Oh, really?
Not villains, but like, he's antagonist.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of it, part of his sort of thing is he's this very wealthy black kid who a lot of the kind of takes he has are the fact that he's not really around a lot of other black people. Like, it's one of those things. He's like, he's the guy who doesn't really have a problem with all his white friends like saying nigger around him.
Okay, yeah.
He's the guy. He's the guy who's he was like, there's a bit is like, yo, why are you ragging on Blue Lives Matter? It's just like, and I think,
dear Carlton.
and I think, and again, like it's like an interesting one because I think at least takes that kind of nuance, and I think they breaking it down. He's a very sympathetic antagonist, but he's one of those characters. And I think just all the characters are updated and really cool.
I'm going to have to check that out
to have a conversation around them too, which is cool.
Holy cow, that's a good one.
And then next on my list is The Batman. It's just a really good movie. And I think it it's really interesting because like it kind of digs into a lot of issues around class. And it's if you've seen the Joker, like it's not exactly like Joker in terms of Batman as a symbol, but a lot of the plot revolves around kind of those class conflicts in a place like Gotham. And obviously a lot of it is around, not to the same degree, but like it's also around race as well a little bit.
Okay.
And obviously Zoe Kravitz is Catwoman. And Zoe Kravitz is fantastic, and from my side of things, like I find it really interesting where usually when characters who, especially in comics, are historically drawn as white, and then made people of colour in film adaptations, there's usually a huge backlash. Catwoman has managed to escape that because not just because of Halle Berry, but because of Eartha Kitt.
I was going to say that.
And I really, really like that. And then I'm interested, but also a little kind of iffy. There's a show coming on Netflix called Young, Famous and African.
Oh my god, I'm
and
so
Leah put me onto this. It's like give us like a 10-second or 20-second rundown.
It looks to me like it's going to be a little bit like Love and Hip Hop, South Africa, quite honestly. So I don't know. I've got mixed feelings about it. I think I'll be there for the train wreck, but like you said before, might be pretty hollow. You know
I think, what I mean? And again, it's that weird line of. When we talk about, we don't want slave narratives. You don't want all these kind of like narratives that center on blackness as
trauma.
Black trauma for that things. But this, and it's again not having to do with struggle or poverty, but this just looks like you've taken like the Kardashian, you've taken the top model, and you've just reskinned it with black people.
And the player guy is diamond platinum. That's bro. From one Tanzanian to another. Come on.
But I definitely find like, and I know I was talking to my flatmate about it, and he was saying like I first saw it and I thought it was going to be about young. I thought it was going to be about artists. I thought it was like it'd be a really good way to like tap into like what the some of the music scene in South Africa is currently, like some of the fashion sort of stuff. And then he was just like, I watched and I'm just like.
Shorts,
and this feels, and again, the comment he made straight after that was, this feels really American.
And the other thing that I get really tired of is the way women are constantly being pitched against one another on these shows.
Right?
Yeah, and that's right off the bat in the shorts. So I'm like, oh, really? You look like you're about 50 years old, lady. Come on, you still gonna throw down for Missy over there?
And it's weird because I did find it interesting. There was like one of the points like when like two of them were screaming and you just see the American, the slight American accent just come out and be like,
I'm not gonna lie. It's nice to hear that other people are watching cheap, trashy things on Netflix. Like I went from like, oh yeah, Will Smith's Will, and What Happened to You, and High on the Hog to like Korean romance. and like Love Is Blind season 2, and I'm like, help me.
I got trapped with that guy Tyler.
Yeah.
and him reading The Dead or something,
Yeah.
pulling up The Dead till 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. No.
I'm like, why am I looking at this?
What are you watching, Byron?
What am I watching? Oh gosh.
A PhD.
If it's embarrassing, that's okay.
Really not much. Honestly, like, because I'm so busy with the
Right.
PhD, I pretty much just watch, my wife comes home and we watch Big Bang Theory together.
Oh, there it
that's,
is.
Oh, true.
That's pretty much it. Like, it's just
Yeah.
wholesome,
And the
it's
petrol
interesting.
prices.
Yeah.
The romance drama that is the petrol
Yeah.
prices.
But
right
I,
now.
that show Taboo, it's quite old, I think it's 2017 with Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
It's just come onto Netflix and I love that show. Like, Tom Hardy to me is such a great actor.
Oh, he's
So I've been-
fantastic.
Yeah, I've been watching that again today, so I'll keep watching that.
I've
In between my PhD work.
I've had Euphoria recommended to me. The lead female is mixed race.
Zendaya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zendaya. She's mixed race. I don't know anything about it. I saw like 3 seconds of like a music video and was like, whoa, okay, that looks like my teenage years.
It seems really interesting. It seems interesting. There's a lot of dialogue, and like I'd be interested, like if you watch it, like to see what your thoughts are, because there's a bit of dialogue around it. So I'm just looking. We've got like 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Alright.
But yeah, though, thank you so much for coming back in, Byron.
Well, thank you
I'm
so much.
Very
for
welcome.
Do you want to come back again?
Honestly, that's great.
We'll give you like a regular, like a monthly slot. Like.
Byron's mind blown.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. You've just written the name for us. So this has been the Blackhouse 106.1 FM. We've had a fantastic day. We'll see you guys
Thank you for
all
tuning
next
in.
week. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.